Hi, thanks, Katie. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Michael,
And I'm Wes.
and we're here to talk to you today about our organisation, but hopefully also shed a bit of light on a topic which is incredibly hot at the moment, and that being surrogacy and our partnership with Sims. I'm going to play a short video now. Within this video, there are some images of birth, so trigger warning if that is quite sensitive to you. The video lasts for about a minute, so if that isn't for you, obviously please just rejoin us in about 50 seconds or so. I'm just going to play this video. Thank you. So you've probably gathered from the video that we're a slightly different organisation than maybe some of the ones that you've been used to seeing or talking to. We've been established since 2021, and in a moment I'm going to tell you a bit more information about the organisation and why we set it up. But for today and for this evening, myself and Wes, we're going to be talking to you about our organisation, some of those legal considerations. As there isn't a surrogacy or family lawyer on today's call, we do have some really important pieces of advice and potentially some signposting who you can speak to should you want to proceed with surrogacy. We're also going to tell you a bit more about Sims and our partnership and why we've partnered with Sims, and then talk about some of those clinical considerations when you are embarking on a surrogacy journey. We're also going to be looking at some of the destinations that are available, as well as the options and some of the destinations that we support through our pathways. We offer a membership-based service, so we're very keen on providing benefits and all of the things that I guess you don't know that you know, because we've both been there on 2 surrogacy journeys and about to embark on our 3rd. We'll very briefly look at some of those returns processes and who you should be talking to. And again, we'll stress the importance of legal advice and signpost in particular 2 specialists that you might want to reach out to. And then Katie's going to open up the webinar. So any questions that you might be seeking. So as we said, we are Mike and Wes, and we are both dads through UK surrogacy and soon to be international surrogacy. We set up our organisation because we wanted to really change the way that people approached surrogacy, both in the UK, but also internationally. We discovered on our journeys that the vulnerability of an intended parent, whether you were gay or straight, single or coupled, meant that you definitely were open to some exploitation, not knowing what you don't know, but also not understanding the destinations that you could work with. And this is some of our fabulous team. Wes, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the team?
Yes, so we have an operational team, but we also have a sales and coordination team. It's all about ensuring that the team that you're working with are able to support you in whatever aspects of the journey you're looking for. We have specialist clinicians who can help make sure that you are educated clinically, but also be there if you have any questions. We work with an embryology team who can help you understand about if you're creating embryos, or if you are embryos already, what are the impacts of that and what's the shipping. We have a counselling team really specific to look after your emotional well-being. It's really about making sure that there's a team to support you at every stage of the journey. And there are going to be various stages of the journey that you need additional support, or you need very specific support. And our team are really designed to make sure that you have access to that at whatever stage of your journey you are looking at.
The team's grown a little bit since this organisational chart. We are on now 41 people within our team, and that spans support across some of the destinations where our intended parents are from. So we have support on the ground in Ireland, obviously, with the help of Sims, and also our own counsellors in that region too. So a bit more about why we created our organisation. When we were embarking on our journey, we made a ton of mistakes, but things that we didn't know about, or information that we weren't warned about. So whether that was choosing our egg donor, choosing our clinic, or even choosing some of the treatment protocols, we just didn't know what we didn't know. And when you're embarking on a fertility journey, it can be expensive, it can be emotionally draining, and it can be hard on your relationship or your marriage. And there were certain elements of our journey that we just weren't prepared for.
And I think what we really have offered within our membership now, and what we recommend, is that you don't know what you don't know on a surrogacy journey. It's about making sure that you have the tools and the support network and the people around you to be successful. The world is full of different pathways, and it's very hard to navigate through what is right for you. And everyone's journey is different. Everyone comes to it from a very different place and comes with different components. Our My Surrogacy Journey is to surround you with the scaffolding to be successful, to give you access to all of the support when you need it, but to also prepare you for what's coming ahead. And that scaffolding is really important. And I think there are very few organizations globally that offer this level of support and this level of structure to be able to enable you to be successful.
And before we launched My Surrogacy Journey, we have and still do run an organisation called Two Dads UK. And that organisation was really a gender lens through being a two-dad family. And it was designed to show people what it was like for a child to have two dads. And spoiler alert, it's really no different. But what we wanted to do is educate people about surrogacy. And that began and still is quite successful in terms of signposting all about UK surrogacy. But we really understood that there was still a community of people, either in countries where surrogacy was challenging or that had to go abroad for surrogacy. And that's where our Irish pathway and My Surrogacy Journey was born in 2021.
It's really clear, though, if you look at our membership base now, 50% of our membership base are heterosexual couples or single people, and 50% are same-sex couples or a single gay men. Now that really surprised us, but it actually becomes the norm. And I think what's really clear to see from both of those types of communities is that often our heterosexual couples are approaching surrogacy as often their last resort, or as a result of really unsuccessful IVF treatments or loss, whereas our same-sex couples are often approaching it as an exciting journey. They know they've always needed surrogacy, and everyone has different requirements, both physically and emotionally. And it's our job to ensure that we provide all of those communities with the resource that they need to be successful.
And that was one of the first things that we noticed when people were joining a surrogacy journey. They were either coming from a loss and a grieving point of view, or coming from a celebration. So therefore, we wanted to make sure those pathways were completely tailored. And our heterosexual intended parents, we wanted to make sure that scaffolding was super tight, that the support was there, the counselling was needed, and that our team could be on standby to really support those individuals. They may need to unpack certain things that they still haven't moved on from, and we wanted to make sure that all of our members were supported like no other global organisation was. Two Dads UK has already supported over 350 men become parents since 2016, and My Surrogacy Journey is on a trajectory to exceed that within 2 years. We are totally thrilled about this particular webinar because we get to talk about one of our favourite topics, which either is our family or how we built our family. But just very briefly, as Wes said, it's the vulnerability, it's the promotion of choice, which was one of the things that we didn't have. We were told we had to go to this organization or go to this country, and that really didn't suit us at that particular time. It's creating more awareness, using our own activism and our contacts to connect people to the best lawyers or the most cost-effective lawyers and the clinics that had the widest coverage within their region. It's about understanding your options, your needs, and where you're coming from. And more importantly, what are your triggers? Is it a particular clinic that you may have been in, or is it a particular country that you just can't have on your radar of surrogacy? That's what our team are here to support.
But it's about understanding that everyone has an individual need, really specific to their circumstances and their potential journey today. And it's really important that we understand that and then build a plan to enable them to be successful, to navigate through that journey.
So we couldn't do what we do without all of our partners, and we've got over 25 partners globally. But in particular for our Irish pathway, we work with a number of organisations on your screen now. So we work with some US surrogacy agencies, Family Source Consultants. We work with some Mexico City clinics, which is Fertilidad Integral and UMAR. And obviously we work with SIMS, who do a lot of our screening, some of our pre-checks, and certainly ensuring that any embryos that are shipped are within the parameters that we need. We work with a number of UK clinics. The one here that I'm highlighting is Manchester Fertility, because there's already quite a good relationship there with SIMS already. And one of our US partners, if you are looking at US surrogacy, is Klein Fertility Law. We also have several Mexico City partners and obviously UK partners if you are UK domiciled. So let's talk about these rogues on the screen now. So these are our much loved, much desired for little humans. So we have two children together. We have Tallulah, who's 7, and we have Duke, our little boy, who is 4. And we created our children with a UK surrogate and 2 separate egg donors. And the reason why we had 2 separate egg donors was because we were poorly advised by our clinic in the first instance. Now, we would never want to change our donor retrospectively now because of our gorgeous boy that we have, but because we were promised or ill-advised or not brought up to speed with egg donation, our initial egg donor where we created Tallulah, the plan was that that donor would donate for a sibling journey, and that never happened, did it, Wes?
It didn't. And look, like Michael said, we wouldn't have changed that. But if we know what we know now, we would have probably made different choices. And that's what our whole ambition is to help you make the right choices by educating you, giving you the right information, and allowing you to have all of that information to make the best choice that's for you. We don't make choices for you, but we help educate you so that you make the best decisions.
And because of our journey, we've experienced things like genetic loss. So for those of you may need to use an egg donor if you're an intended mother, or for a same-sex couple that need to have an egg donor, but only one of you will be providing sperm. We've experienced what genetic loss can feel like, and that in itself can be a journey. So we unpack that, we support you with that, we make sure our counsellors are trained in that, and we ensure that whether you're an intended mother or an intended father, you are fully supported, like Wes said, with the scaffolding around you. We're about to embark on our 3rd journey. I've really worked hard on Wes to really convince him for the baby, and thank gosh, I've finally got there. So we will hopefully be looking at another transfer in the spring of this year. So a bit more about us. We like to keep ourselves busy. As I mentioned, we have an organisation called Two Dads UK that you can see in the centre of your screen, and that is both an online support group as well as an organisation that supports gay men, bi men, trans and queer men on a journey to parenthood. We have a production company called Tallulah and the Duke, and that is where all of our podcasts sit under, and we'll talk about the podcasts in a moment. But we have podcasts of our daughters, has one called Tallulah Talks, which is a brand new podcast coming out in April, which looks at her life through her lens as a girl's eye view, being donor conceived and born through a surrogate. We have a surrogate podcast only, which is for surrogates, written and hosted by surrogates. And we're now in our 3rd season of My Surrogacy Journey, the podcast. which is Europe's most downloaded surrogacy podcast currently. And then My Surrogacy Journey, I'll let Wes talk a bit more about MSJ.
So this is our organisation that helps support people to navigate through their surrogacy pathway. We also have an office in Mexico City, which supports our UK operation, but also supports intended parents who are in country on a pathway through Mexico City. We have a team of 6 people and an office there, and a really good infrastructure there of partner and resource. We also have the Surrogacy Network, which is the UK's only surrogacy networking profile. And we're also working on some other elements in the UK and internationally to help people navigate through surrogacy with our toolkits.
We also have a charity organisation, currently a CIC, soon to be charity, that's called My Surrogacy Journey Foundation. And this organisation is all about reproductive injustice. So we are working with partners all over the world in terms of trying to break down some of the stigmas with regards to infertility, but also the inequalities with accessing fertility treatment.
There's a lot of work to be done around surrogacy and understanding surrogacy globally, and the foundation is designed to tackle that. It's to help people understand it, raise awareness, and put resource around areas where things are needed so that we can make more productive change.
Within the foundation, there is the Surrogacy Research Network, and we're working with universities all over the UK to pull together all of this vital research about children born through surrogacy and those that go through surrogacy journeys. There's not one central organisation that pulls the research and then publishes meaningful data with the outcomes of children born through surrogacy, such as how they're thriving, whether they are or not, why people access surrogacy, medical needs or not. And this was an organisation that is led by Kay King, as well as leading the foundation. She's a doula, our director and a surrogate, and she is leading the foundation and its brands. And she's soon to launch also My Surrogacy Journey Learning, which is online learning for healthcare professionals, understanding more how to deal with surrogates and intended parents.
The Surrogacy Research Network really feeds into meaningful change. One of the ways that we can impact change is by having data that demonstrates that. So the research network is really designed to collect and obtain all of that data to be able to help make meaningful change.
And then finally, there's 2 organisations left. So the Modern Family Show we run, which are more than welcome to attend. It's an event in London every September, and it's all about fertility treatment, surrogacy, adoption, fostering, co-parenting. It's the only organisation and the only event of its kind with broad reach that exists in Europe. And we founded this organisation off the back of us attending a fertility show ourselves that was not very pro-surrogacy or pro-LGBTQ. So we wanted to create an organisation to support that. And it's now in its 4th year. It's the biggest event of its kind. And like I say, this year it takes place on the 29th of September. Finally, we've got an awards organisation which is there to support anyone that works in pregnancy, birth, and family building. And our mission, or our vision and our mission, is also on your screen below. So some episodes or some information or research or resources, that you might find interesting is the podcast. So we're in season 3. In season 1 there were over 18 episodes and we're on over 12,000 downloads now. It's from our data, it's already very well listened to in Ireland, and has been sponsored by the likes of Hearts and Essex in the UK, but also Sims IVF, because we featured some very special episodes for Irish intended parents. So you might want to check back and listen to some of those. And we're already in episode or season 3 now. There was an episode all about surrogacy for Irish nationals with Annette Hickey. So you might want to also have a look at that particular episode. So our pathways. We're going to come on to talk about all the options for you now. So we have a number of pathways, programs, surrogacy destinations. We call them pathways because of the amount of support that we offer to you on them. All of our pathways use and pull on our extensive network that we've developed over the last 8 years. The destinations currently include Mexico City, the USA. We were or did have a Canadian pathway, and obviously we have a UK program, which is super popular with over 400 intended parents working through that particular one. But obviously, to access UK surrogacy, you have to be domiciled in the UK. Canada, we'll come on to in a moment to just explain why we no longer recommend in Canada. I guess this is one of those slides where I'm happy for you to take a photo of. It's a super important piece of information. No one has collated this type of data before. The prices are all in euro, and it's there really to show you the number of popular destinations, some of which you might already recognize. So there are destinations like Canada and Ukraine and Georgia, all very popular destinations for Irish nationals. There's also Cyprus, Colombia, and Argentina on here. So these, like I say, are super popular and are some of the destinations that a lot of intended parents also want to work with, obviously including Greece as well. One of the important things or important takeaways to this document would be this particular point here around local surrogates. What a lot of people don't understand when they're embarking on a surrogacy journey is what is the jurisdiction of their surrogate and where do they live. This can have catastrophic outcomes depending on where they live and whether you're, in this particular case, whether you're LGBTQ. If you are working in Cyprus, for example, but your surrogate is from Ukraine or Georgia or Albania, which is quite common in those destinations, then your surrogate is a traveling surrogate. And therefore, if she were to give birth early or wasn't in the country of birth where your journey is meant to complete, then that could be really complex for you. Where's anything to add on this particular slide?
No, I think complex is an understatement. I mean, often if your surrogate gives birth in a country like Romania, Georgia, those destinations, then the likelihood of you getting your baby,
if you're LGBTQ,
is remote because it's illegal in those destinations. And I think it's about understanding the impact or the risk associated with the destination. And I think we would always advocate for anyone embarking on a destination to ensure that they go into that with their eyes wide open and understand all of the implications of that, as well as the risks associated with it. And, you know, we are all about ensuring that everyone understands all of those impacts, all of those elements and the impact of that. And we as an organization are, and that's why we only work in certain destinations, because we have the confidence that there's a robust framework in there. There's legal ability to be successful. There's the support services in there, and there's you know, surrogates that aren't traveling. And that's why we only work in the destinations that Michael mentioned earlier.
And the reason why we talk about local surrogates is we're all about ensuring that surrogates and therefore the welfare of any child that's born is safe. A traveling surrogate or a local surrogate can translate to a surrogate that's trafficked. So we really want to be super clear on the ethics behind surrogacy, which is why we limit the destinations that we work in, because to us, a traveling surrogate is technically a trafficked surrogate because they have to leave their family behind and often their children around about week 20 of a pregnancy. So it means that they're separated from their family, which we don't agree with. So this is a super, super important slide. These are legal considerations to consider before your journey begins. Now, we are not surrogacy or family lawyers. This is our statement, but it is our brief interpretation of what might be coming down the track if the recent bill and the amendments become law and are commenced. By way of an update, we finally have movement with the bill, and it is now at committee stage in Ireland. We should have a report, and possibly we may have more advanced by the summer recess. When the bill was drafted, the only surrogacy provisions related to altruistic surrogacy were domestic, so taking place in Ireland only. That is the preferred method. Since then, the Minister has drafted 3 additional provisions related to surrogacy. You may have seen it, you may have not. And that is past domestic, past international, and future international surrogacy. Anything to add?
No, I think you know, some of you may be aware, some of you may not, that there is there is change coming. This has been talked about for a significant amount of time. And I had the privilege of reading through the draft bill probably last month. And I think there's this understanding potentially in fields of intended parents that the law changes coming and this is going to be positive. Now, you know, there are elements of it that are positive, but on a whole, I think it's going to be a lot more complex than people realise, and it's going to be a lot more challenging than people realise. Now, obviously, we don't know exactly what that bill's going to look like until it's made into law,
or how long it
or how long it will take. But the reality is, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult than people realise, and there's going to be a lot more elements to consider when embarking on a surrogacy journey as an Irish national than you typically had before. And I think that's what, you know, what my constituent is about to talk through is the reality of it.
Yeah. So as Wes perfectly said, international surrogacy arrangements are already complex and may be becoming even more complex. Commercial surrogacy arrangements will not be permitted under the recommendation, and engaging in one could result in a criminal sanction. Pre-approval from the new regulatory authority is required, and only specific expenses will be permitted to the surrogate. That's where the link of commercial and altruism comes into play. You should also note that the regulatory authority has to be established, be up and running post commencement of the legislation, which means that could be a gap before that happens. In the UK, for example, we have been campaigning for law reform since 2012, and we are still no further to getting our new law passed by the Law Commission and the UK government. We have seen movement in Ireland move quite quickly in the last 12 months, but we just don't know when this new law could be sworn in. Our advice would be to seek legal advice from a reputable surrogacy lawyer, someone like Fiona Duffy or Annette Hickey.
I think, as Michael mentioned there, you know, some of the key words that came out of that statement were about altruistic. Now, there are very few altruistic destinations in the UK and in the world, and those destinations that are altruistic have certain challenges around wait times. Canada's one of them, the UK is another. Wait times are very, very lengthy. You know, there are only certain destinations that are open to Irish nationals, and that's going to that availability is going to become less and less. Very few destinations in the States operate in an altruistic way. Other destinations don't operate in an altruistic way. So if that is what comes through into law, I think it's going to become very complex. And I think there's ability that destinations will be red, amber, green, and have to be signed off before you can access them in advance. So I think if my personal opinion of this is, it's going to make the ability or the availability of destinations much, much narrower.
What I would say is, speaking to a surrogacy lawyer, you will understand that there are certain interpretations of what deems a future journey in terms of, is that when the embryo is transferred, or is there any retrospective means within your journey? And again, I would seek legal advice just to understand the particular clarity.
But it's all around the detail.
It really is.
It's all around the detail of what constitutes retrospective. Is it embryos created? Is it surrogate matched? Is it embryo transfer? I think there's going to be lots of things to come to help people.
And that's not clear yet. So I think it's still open to interpretation. And that's what the current lawyers that I've mentioned are obviously talking to us about. So definitely seek legal advice and learn more about the potential new bill. So a bit about our SIMS partnership. SIMS are working with us to ensure all of our Irish intending parents have the relevant screening in order to move forward with their journey, of which we're already supporting a number of IPs already. So as you know, as Katie explained perfectly at the beginning, SIMS are one of the leading fertility clinics in Ireland, and since 1997 have cared for thousands of patients. Over 25 years experience and 6 clinics that cover Ireland, 3 main clinics and then 3 satellite clinics. They're part of Virtuous Health, who are, if you don't know, one of the world's leading fertility groups with global knowledge and a global footprint. Certainly helped pioneer IVF technology within Ireland, which they're super proud of, and offer additional benefits, either health insurances and financial support through some of their partners. And they are one of the largest teams in Ireland supporting people on IVF and IUI journeys.
And they are the only clinic in Ireland to partner with My Surrogacy Journey. And I think what's worth acknowledging here is that they have a very similar ethos and style to how that we have. They have the same kind of values, and they really appreciate everything that's involved in not only an IVF journey but also a surrogacy journey. And their team, we've spent significant time with the team to help them understand all of the components appropriate for surrogacy so that they can better support their patients, not only those who choose to go on a surrogacy journey, but those who actually come to the end of their IVF journey and have no choice but then other to go on a surrogacy journey.
So what's the role of SIMS IVF in the internal surrogacy process or the international surrogacy process? And that's basically providing that in-country support for you on your particular journey. Quite often, if people are joining a surrogacy journey from an IVF journey previously, there are going to be some elements to the journey that you may need additional support, either emotionally, professionally, or even clinically, if your embryos haven't been approved for export, for example, or for the use in surrogacy. SIMS ensure that you are the support that you need at home. We have additional people on the ground as well in Ireland, and we will ensure that the whole continuity of care is maintained. And obviously, they have a fabulous team of fertility experts available in Ireland. Whereas from a testing point of view.
Before I talk about testing, I think what's really important, and one of the things that really stood out to us when we first started working with SIMS, was about how passionate the team are, how they want to ensure that you have all of the information, how they want to work with you to get all of the advice. And I think that the very nature that they've partnered with My Surrogacy Journey shows that they want to be able to show that continuity of care. Whether you are from an oncology patient, whether you've come from IVF or you're part of the LGBT community that needs that support, SIMS are really well equipped to be able to provide all of those services for all of those patient groups. And that's one of the strengths, I think, with the partnership that we have. It's really easy for you guys for SIMS to refer over to us, and then we can give that continuity of care. One of the requirements often for in an international journey, whether that be the US, or whether that be Mexico City, it's about the level of screening and how can we give you access to that screening, whether it's carrier screening, blood work, semen analysis, all of those things. It's about building a network, and SIMS was the perfect partner with their broad network across Ireland to be able to provide these services. It's about it being convenient for the patient, being able to access it when it's needed, but also then for us to be handed over to us so then we can forward it on to those clinics and those elements in those destinations. It's also about understanding if you do have embryos created already, whether that be through oncology or through unsuccessful IVF, that we can deal with that as well, look at retrospective screening, and then look at the whole shipping process. We are a full turnkey solution organisation. We do support from start to end, and shipping is one of those components that we consider. It's complex depending on where you're shipping from and to, but we have those networks through SIMS and our courier companies to be able to assist there as well.
So all of our programs, as Wes said, are a fully turnkey solution, certainly for Mexico and the UK. The US, we'll talk about in a moment, which works slightly different. So we have a team on the ground in Mexico City. It's a program that we have wanted to set a new standard in Mexico. So whether you're familiar with surrogacy in Mexico or not, Mexico was actually the first destination we researched back in 2015 when we started our journey. And it just wasn't right for us then. Lots was changing in Mexico, and surrogacy just wasn't what we wanted it to be. So we have set out to change that. We have provided better support for surrogates. Mexico City we really like because of the legal framework and the way surrogates are protected and supported both socially, economically, but also within the surrogacy community. Some of the treatment that takes place in Mexico City is some of the best that I've ever seen, with some of the best outcomes that I've ever witnessed. So the clinics and the doctors that we work with are world class.
I think it's worth acknowledging that people are very cautious. And there are some destinations or some states in Mexico that have a bad reputation, and we don't work in those. We have to be mindful about how surrogacy is viewed globally. But we work in Mexico City for a very specific reason, and that's because the surrogates have better access to education, they have better access to health, they typically live a very Western lifestyle, and they have all of that support network around them. You know, our surrogates have they go through a whole range of screening before they're matched. So they go through cultures, they go through saline infusion scan, and they have all of the serology. They have a psychological evaluation to ensure that they're doing surrogacy for the right reasons. They're not doing it for necessity. They have to be financially independent before embarking on surrogacy. And they also have to have a psychological evaluation to ensure that they're robust enough mentally to be able to manage a journey. All of those components and elements are really important to us. And it's about ensuring that everyone who's embarking on a surrogacy journey, whether you're a surrogate or an intended parent, that you have the support and the resource around you to be successful.
And all of these things that Wes just mentioned is a world first. No one does what we do on the ground in Mexico City, because we wanted to change the standard, or change, set the standard and change the landscape in terms of how people approach surrogacy, but also how people view surrogacy. If a woman wanted to be a surrogate in Mexico City, we wanted her to feel empowered, not shamed. We wanted to make sure that communities in Mexico City also understood what being a surrogate meant. Therefore, the social economic review that we do ensures that these women aren't being coerced or forced into doing something that they don't want to do. And my body, my choice is one of our mantras that we promote very heavily in all of our destinations. One of the reasons why we like Mexico City is the fact that you have access to pre-birth orders, which is very similar to the United States. In fact, it's almost identical. That means that the judge is involved or is aware of your case at week 14.
It's submitted to the courts at week 14. And essentially what you were asking to do is for the courts to recognise you or both of you as the legal parents pre-birth. And then once the baby is born, the pre-birth order and the birth certificate goes to the registry, and then it allows us then to apply for what's called an emergency travel certificate for Irish intended parents to be able to exit the country. It's a really streamlined process, and it's really what people are looking for, because getting that recognition before birth and both of you appearing, or one of you appearing on the birth certificate without the surrogate being on there is really important. It's ensuring that there's that continuity of parentage.
And again, depending when your journey starts and depending on what the new legislation says, you could qualify for, I think, 0.2 or 0.3 within the new predicted or recommended legislation. So always get legal advice on that. As Wes mentioned, both parents, certainly in Mexico, will be named on the birth certificate. So you will have that document from a security point of view. And then what's unique in Mexico City is that surrogates are also named as a surrogate on your birth certificate. So on the initial certificate, surrogates aren't erased. There is still that trace.
I think one of the big advantages, and a lot of the reasons why people want to work in Mexico City as a destination, is that the match time with the surrogate is 3 months. The process from start to finish is between 15 to 18 months. It's a very efficient process. A lot of it runs in parallel, and from starting the process to embryo transfer, you're looking at between 4.5 and 5 months.
Yeah, certainly one of the quickest pathways that we've ever worked in. And again, we've been building this program for over 12 months now, in terms of putting all of the robustness in there to protect the surrogate, your future child, and obviously you.
One of the things that's really important from an Irish perspective is that both the surrogate and the intended parents have independent legal advice. They both have separate lawyers. They're both advocated for independently, and a contract is created between both parties to ensure that all elements of the journey are covered and everyone is protected. We really like it. We work with some amazing lawyers that represent both parties, and it's a really robust way to navigate through surrogacy.
We have a specific online brochure specific for intended parents that includes all the information about our pathway. But creating embryos, if you're creating embryos in Mexico City, is €76,700. And if you are shipping, is 72,800. And within all of that cost is literally everything that you're going to need to complete your journey, with the exception of your Irish legals. That is correct, in addition to that particular sum. So you will need to budget anything from 12 to 15,000.
The only other element that's not included, and we're going to talk about a little bit on a further slide, is on and keep paternity services. you're looking at around €1,000 for that particular service. But that is all about the exit process and attaining the emergency travel certificate, which enables you to travel back to Ireland as quick as 4 weeks post-birth. So it's probably one of the quickest exit processes in the world.
I think it is actually the quickest exit process.
And they have a really robust process. It involves the I'm probably jumping ahead slide-wise here, but it involves the Irish Embassy in Mexico City. It involves Ormond Key in Ireland, and it involves some paternity testing. But they all work through the support of Ormond Key to enable you to get the documentation for your baby to leave Mexico City and travel back to Ireland.
So Ormond Key are essentially a paternity test. So as part of the requirement to leave Mexico with an Irish travel certificate is that they have to determine that there's a genetic link to one of the parents.
Yeah. And Ormond Key, they provide this whole service, and our advice to you would be contact Ormond Key as soon as you have a confirmed pregnancy. They'll help you navigate through the whole process. Make sure you've got all the documentation in place. They are a government-approved organisation, the only one, and they are really efficient. Shout out to Audrey at Ormond Key. She's the one really who manages all of those elements, and they are really there to make that whole process of attaining the emergency travel certificate as straightforward as possible. And they are very, very good at it.
Yeah. If anybody does want to view the e-brochure, I suggest you reach out to Sims. Our email will be at the end of the presentation, but feel free to reach out to Katie to provide further information. So other destinations, again, commercial destinations, but for the purpose of today and today's law, the USA is the gold standard for commercial surrogacy. It's been established probably the longest now, and is a very robust commercial framework with contracts that are enforceable every step of your journey. And because of that, it is globally the most expensive journey. There are multiple options, multiple states. So from California to Utah to Florida, those destinations all flex with varying treatment costs and surrogacy compensation and expenses. As we mentioned a minute ago, there are pre-birth orders in certain states. Not every state is gay friendly, and not every state allows single people. So please get legal advice before you embark on a USA journey. But there are, in certain states, you can be recognized legally in the United States as the parent of your child. You do then need to enter into an Irish legal system when you return. And Ormond Key also help with that with your lawyer. The surrogate match time in the US at the moment is anything between 6 and 12 months. The average journey time from start to finish to coming home is anything from 18 to 24 months, so slightly longer than the USA. Sorry, the Mexico City. However, the range of the cost of a USA journey is vast and costs between $200,000 to $250,000. That's still where it's tracking. Yeah. As I mentioned, it is a robust legal framework.
It's probably the safest place to do surrogacy in the world, but it comes at a cost, and those are the challenges. What I typically say about the US is that this is an example here. There are 10 steps that are 10 components that you need. There are more than that, but just for example's sake, you need all of those components. You can't do one without, but you can look at every single component and have a look at, do you go top end, do you go mid-price, or do you go more affordable? So you can look at all of those components and look at how you can minimize the cost process. But I think what's worth stating in a place like the US is that you need to be able to have budget for it not being successful. And we don't like to encourage people to max their budget, because if then something isn't successful and you need, another round of IVF, or you need some additional clinical testing or insurance, you need to be able to have the finances to support that. So it is about being realistic about what the costs are in the US, and having contingency to be able to manage any bumps in the road that come along with it.
We are seeing US surrogacy prices increase. Seems to be every 3 to 6 months. So the prices in the US are increasing. Whether that's surrogate availability or the demand that's been fed, we are seeing the US increase.
And the wait times are varying. The general principle or guidance with the US is the more you pay, the quicker you get it. And you know, if you want to wait longer, then it's going to be more affordable. So it really depends on what your timeframes are.
So one of the other destinations which is really common for Irish nationals is, and for us was, Canada. It's altruistic, so it certainly ticks the box for Irish nationals and future law reform. There are a limited number of surrogacy agencies and a limited number of fertility clinics in what is a huge country. It has a very high domestic demand and a very high international demand, specifically for Europeans and those US citizens that are working to a tight budget. Depending on the province of where the baby's born, there are pre-birth orders, which is great. And there are legal, you are recognised legally for both intended parents on the birth certificate. Surrogate match times, this is the reason why we no longer recommend it, because you are looking at a minimum of 2 years for a journey to complete. We have previously recommended this journey, and we have seen people waiting, if we hadn't moved them to other destinations, still 3 years later and no match to a surrogate. It's also important to understand that a lot of the terms and the conditions for all of the surrogacy agencies in Canada, I believe, have all recently been amended. So definitely, if you are embarking on a Canadian journey, just be really thorough with getting your lawyer to understand the terms and conditions and what a match or a rematch means to you financially, because that can be something that is a bit of a sting.
Yeah. And I think there's lots of the agencies and the lawyers in Canada right now are working with other agencies in Mexico City to move people out of Canada, because the wait time is so long, to enable them to move their journey and then potentially start the Canadian route moving again, which inevitably is just going to block up again like it currently is. So I would just advise anyone considering Canada to proceed with caution and understand all of the elements. There are some really good blogs online that help you understand from an intended parent's perspective the reality of surrogacy in Canada.
As we mentioned earlier, we gave a shout out to Audrey Sullivan, who works at Ormond Key Paternity Services. They're in Dalgany, and she is incredibly efficient, and there is no one within this particular sector that knows what she knows.
She's very experienced. She understands all of the destinations and all of the pros and cons between the destinations. I would definitely recommend engaging with Ormond Key, even if not before, but as soon as you have a confirmed pregnancy, just so that you understand all of the steps and you can put those steps in place at the right times to be as efficient as possible.
And that kind of concludes our presentation about My Surrogacy Journey and some of the destinations that we offer or don't offer, but it's there really to help you understand what it is that we potentially could do to help, or even signpost you where you need to go. So thank you for watching. We were My Surrogacy Journey.